Hey everyone, I'm your host, James Jackson, and this is ARCast Tech Talks. Join me each episode as we shine the spotlight on a solution provider, helping category managers, shopper insights, and space planning experts tackle the challenges of today and the future. I think you'll agree this is an interesting time in our industry. While we are faced with complexities throughout the marketplace, this is an opportunity for us to really shine. So today we are here with Olivier Delangre, who is going to provide insights on shopper behavior, global retail, and more. So Olivier is a co-founder and CEO of Amoobi, and he also serves on the board of directors. Olivier bridges the gap between deep technical expertise and business strategy. He holds a PhD in engineering from the University of Brussels and the University of Lille, a master's in management, and a degree in electrical engineering from ULB. Oh my God. Where
It's
he
a lot.
also served as a teaching assistant. So needless to say, you are well educated. All right. So with that, Olivier, welcome to the show.
Hey, hi, James. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we've been talking for years actually, and I've been following a movie. You've been doing some great work. Last February you spoke at our annual conference, so that was
Yeah,
great. And
absolutely.
so it's really, I'm excited to have you on Tech Talk. So if you're ready, let's have some real talk.
Let's go. I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to throw a little curveball at you. So before we get started, I have to understand something. So I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and you have this university background, and you did your teaching assistantship, and then you did a couple entrepreneurial things with writing and editing. You did a coaching business, and then all of a sudden you're a Amoobi. So what happened? How did a movie kind of come into being?
Well, I'll try to give you the short story, but
Yeah.
so I was doing a PhD in engineering, and so I was a teaching assistant at university. I really wanted to start a company, so I really had the drive to go into entrepreneurship. So went to see a couple of friends to start brainstorming about some ideas. That's why it's such a technical company, because I have a very technical background, and my co-founder also are engineers. But actually, you mentioned that I did some other ventures. While I was kind of preparing to start a company, someone challenged me to say, "Well, you're never going to do it. Like you're overthinking it." And so that's why I started the first venture, which was actually with my sister-in-law, who is in the US.
Oh,
That was around proofreading and editing, very different type of business, but more as a fun game that we did together for a couple of years with some success. So it was a good way to learn and to get started to the real thing, which is a movie.
got it. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I was like, holy cow, you went from like that to like a pretty high tech company, but I see it with the engineering background too. So awesome. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit. And for our audience, we've been talking about the marketplace, a couple different times, especially this year. So I want to start at kind of the 30,000 foot level.
Yeah.
And I've always been curious. And so if you could share the similarities and the differences between retailers in the US and Europe. So if you could give us a little color on that, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the part of my job that I like the most is we are a very international business. So I used to live in the US, and obviously I'm from Europe and from Belgium actually. So I've seen both sides of the ocean. There are some significant differences between the two. I would say first one would be size of the store. So typically European store are much smaller. I would say typical grocery store would be like 15,000, 20,000 square feet. So that's significantly smaller than your typical Safeway, Kroger, or
Yeah.
let's not talk even about a Walmart, which means that we have less SKU. Therefore, the notion of space optimization and everything like assortment optimization, how do you squeeze those products into a limited space is key. So that's one. I think another obvious one is private label. As you know, private labels in Europe is like 40% for many retailers of sales. I think it's more like 15, 20 in the US. So that's quite different. And obviously in Europe, we have some We can maybe talk more about that later, but we have some retailers like Monoprix in France who are doing some fun branding with their private labels. Obviously, we have the Aldi and Lidl who are demonstrated that you can actually create some high quality product with your own private label and sell just a full range of private labels product. And they are pretty strong in Europe. And obviously, Aldi is very strong in the US as well. I think another one is maybe the relationship between retailer and suppliers. That's something that strikes me because that's core to what we do. I would say that first, Europe is not a single market. It's a lot of different countries and there are differences. But overall, the relationship is more focused on negotiation and probably a bit less collaborative than what it is in the US, where in my experience, see more collaboration. It would be interesting to see if the audience thinks the same, but I actually really believe that collaboration is on average much better in the US compared to Europe. And maybe the last one is technology. I think Europe has adopted technology quite quickly. I think it comes down to also labor cost is it's quite expensive in Europe. So you'll find a lot of electronic shelf label has been around for many, many years. Self-checkout is everywhere. So everything productivity related, but also everything that can help squeeze this assortment into a rather limited size of store. So assortment optimization, space optimization are technologies that you will find a lot more, I would say, on average in Europe. Like pretty much every store in Europe has like ESL, electronic shelf label, for example, while
Oh,
it's
really?
just kind of coming up in US right now. Walmart being the good example as they're rolling out right now, but yeah, still not that frequent in US. But in many ways, everything I said about Europe, about the need for optimization, the need for technology, for productivity, it's coming as well in US because for different reasons, you also have the need to operate in a more efficient way. So it's actually very interesting to be on both sides because you can see things going from one side of the ocean to the other.
Anything that's similar? Things that we do in the US that you're kind of seeing in Europe as well?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, first, the online trend is very much there as well. So I would say the pickup is organized in a bit a
Okay.
different way, but there is also quite a lot of pickup in store, online delivery. I think there is on both sides a big focus on fresh because that's a way to attract shopper and to make them come to the store. So finding ways to provide a great fresh produce experience is something they will find on both sides. And I mean, overall, the same challenge about how you drive growth and in a very competitive market, very competitive on both sides. It's hard to expand the size of the pie. I mean, people are not eating more, so it's how do you get more efficient and try to, yeah, always find new ways to innovate and to compete with your with other retailers on the market.
Okay. Okay. Well, you gave us a laundry list of things. I'm going to try and hit a couple of them specifically
Yeah, sure.
because I'm interested. Hopefully, our audience is as well. And the first one was you mentioned private label,
Yeah.
and you mentioned that 40% number, and we're 15 to 20%. I guess one, was Europe always that way, or how did it get to 40%? What is it about Europe that opened the door for private label?
Well, I think over time, private labels has become really a destination brand.
Oh,
So people are not just looking for, not just comparing, they're like really engaging with private labels. So over time, many European retailers have developed a real brand identity. So really try to market the brand and to communicate that it's kind of the same quality but lower price. You have many retailers who actually have multiple layers of private labels, a little bit like Walmart is doing with great value and better goods. So, I mean, like retailer in France, like Carrefour, have multiple private labels depending on whether it's really focused on price or more on like premium offering. So it really has become, yeah, a destination, a brand in itself. And so now it's competing really strongly. And that's why people have trust. They believe in the quality. I guess obviously having Lidl and Aldi also has helped to show that you can get like the same level of quality with private labels. But that also means that it drives a different way of interaction with your suppliers because it's taking part of the market. So it's an interesting category management discussion about how you deal with your key brands when you have private labels that is growing and growing. For example, some of our clients, they have specific rules about where should be private labels. So they say like it should be brand block or ice level or some set of rules, and that's a non-negotiable item. So when they start discussing with their suppliers, like it has to be like that, and we'll work around where you guys will go, but our private labels has to be there. So it does create some friction, but well, the shopper is choosing for it, and so they're buying it. So and I think the same is going to come in the US, especially right now. It's a lot of pressure on price, and people are looking for value, and that's a key thing that private label is offering is yeah, value for money.
So you mentioned then kind of, a potential trend happening in the US. I mean, I remember it's been years where retailers have said, we want to increase our private label penetration to 20%, 25%, and we've never really gotten there, across the board. What do you think is causing, or what caused that? What barrier potentially? Was it the retailers that maybe were doing something wrong? Was it the shopper that um, didn't buy in to a private label, or what do you think it is?
I think it's a range of things.
Okay.
I think there is a trust factor. So it's
Okay.
over time you have to communicate about the value of the private label and showing that it is high quality and that there is no trade-off on quality with the price. But I think also it's very much a category management topic because some brands obviously are really powerful. Like think about like the Coca-Cola or the Tide, and so they have a pretty dominant space in the aisle. And so, well, it goes hand in hand. At some point, you have to make space for the private labels and really develop a brand strategy. I think that's not easy to do because retailers are not naturally equipped for that, at least a lot less than the big CPG. But more and more, they are developing their own way of thinking of communicating about the value of the brand. And yeah, I think over time you gain trust, you give a better visibility to the private label, and you also learn how to cohabit with the big CPG and how you organize the total category because it's a trade-off. I mean, it's 40% in Europe, but um, it's still 60% that's not private label. So so there's still a real opportunity to have the brands that people want, to have the brands that young generations see on TikTok or Instagram and want to have in their basket. I mean, that's
Yeah.
part of the game as well. So
Yeah. So let me double down on that for a minute. So let's say, for instance, we in the US go from 20% to 30 to 40. Obviously, that will have an impact on a CPG. So what is a CPG, a branded manufacturer who wants to see their brand on the shelf? And now there's the fewer facings, fewer SKUs, fewer brands. What is that impact on the CPG universe?
well, I mean, it's significant because it lowers the size of the pie, of course, but
Yeah.
that means, as always, you can either fear the change or play along with the change and try to make the best of it. So I think ultimately what is expected from the brand is to offer a differentiated product, to innovate more, to bring novelty to the category, to bring quality, premiumization of the category, things that typically private labels don't really do well. They are more focused on value for money type of thing. So it's about whether you can reinvent yourself and your assortment to make sure your brand is positioned in the long run and differentiated compared to private label. But well, there's no space for everyone. So yes, it will create some friction and some challenge for some CPG. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to something you said before, and it ties to a question I had next. And that's around in Europe. I was actually surprised. I think we were having a conversation a while back this year, and I was like, hey, obviously in Europe, manufacturers and retailers, they really collaborate and it's probably better. And you're like, no, it's the opposite. And you just mentioned it again. Um, can you talk about that dynamic in Europe? And is any of that driven potentially by the private label penetration and the fact that, the brands aren't as big overseas as they are here?
Well, it certainly plays a factor because when you, as a brand, are talking to your favorite retailer, you know that they are in parallel thinking about their own interest of pushing the private label. So it's kind of a tricky situation. Um, so having it plays a role. Having a role, it's also the nature of the culture in retail. It depends on some countries, but if you take Germany, it's very driven by discount because it's the home country of Aldi and Lidl, and there are other discounter in Germany. So negotiation on price is really key. In France, negotiation is very important, very regulated. So it has to happen in a certain period of time. It has to be finished by a certain date, which is very unique. So it creates pressure on the negotiation piece, and that creates some friction. That being said, collaboration remains key because ultimately retail is a combination of like the shopper and the offer. And so you have to collaborate and work together to make the best possible shopping experience. So there are still a lot of opportunities to collaborate, but it does feel sometimes that it's a little more difficult. I think overall the relationship is a lot more based on negotiation in Europe. I think in US you also have like the unique model of Walmart, who is working with category advisor. I think it's kind of unique to the US as well, but it's certainly unique in comparison to Europe. So where they have managed to really have teams of CPG working for them directly on space planning matters and assortment. So that's a very unique. And frankly, when I go back to some of my clients in Europe and I explain the Walmart model, everyone is amazed that it's even possible to do that. So
So the category captain program does not exist in Europe.
it does, but in a much smaller way. So
Okay.
many retailers have some sort of category captain, but less is required. Like you don't have to have big
Okay.
teams like you have at Walmart who
Okay.
are really doing the planogramming for you, etc. So it's more a role to be able to collaborate, influence more, partner, and frankly, there are some great examples of collaboration between the CPG and the retailer, and it is still the future because ultimately no one can win if you don't have a good collaboration and good interaction. So I think in itself, it's a real question is how do you actually move from the negotiation to collaboration? And one way to move to collaboration is how do you have a shared language of inside data to be able to work together?
Okay. Interesting. That is interesting. So, I do have this, and I don't know if I'm going to ask it correctly, but I'll try. Um, Given what we're seeing here in the US with Aldi, I was on a roundtable discussion where they're talking about Lidl starting to reinvest in the US and what could happen there. We have Costco. We have all and then the shopper is, like you said, looking for more value because of inflation and all these things. You've got private label going. So is the US headed in some way to more of a like a European model?
Um, I mean, depends what you define as European model, but first thing I will say is that if we look back in history, there have been a number of attempts from European retailer to get into the US market, and it was not always successful. So we have to keep in mind that what Aldi managed to do is remarkable because I remember, I think that was probably 6, 7 years ago, being at the headquarters of some really big retailer in the US, and there were some plan on how to fight back. Lidl was about to enter the US market. That was before they set foot on the US market. And they've struggled to get into the US market. I don't know how much our audience remember, but Tesco, the big UK retailer, has tried to enter the US market several years ago and they failed. On the other hand, Ahold Delhaize is essentially a European retailer. I mean, from a headquarter perspective, and they're doing a great job on the East Coast. So first of all, it is not easy. I think there are many things that are happening in Europe that are coming to the US, and frankly, vice versa. But for example, there has been maybe a head start from Europe to deploy more technology in store for labor optimization and cost optimization. But I think every US retailer is looking at the same right now. They're trying to see how they can improve their cost structure. And so they are looking at ESL, they are looking at out of stock type of solution, they are looking at assortment optimization, space optimization. So I think it's gonna go there. And I mean, it's not me saying, like, many US retailers have announced that they have big plans to increase the share of private labels. So I think it's coming as well. Whether they will be successful will be an interesting question, but they're going to try to go down that path for sure.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that's good. Well, Olivier, we've been talking for a while, and we have this segment called Tech Check,
Yeah.
and you've been very gracious in sharing your knowledge, but you haven't really shared a lot about your company. So, would love if you could maybe spend 30 seconds or so to talk about Amoobi, and then also how it can help our audience.
Yeah, sure. So Amoobi, in a way, it's like Google Analytics for physical retail. So we put 3D sensors in the ceiling of store to track automatically and anonymously the unique path of each individual shopper. So the goal is to understand where they go, where they spend time, where they hesitate, and ultimately to convert that into recommendation for space optimization adjacencies. And what we typically see is that it leads to improvement of like 5 to 15% increase in sales. That's pretty significant because we help shopper basically have an easier path to purchase in the category. So we don't, I would summarize that like we don't track sales, we track the lost sales that didn't made it to the register and trying to understand where is this lost sales and how we can get that back.
Okay, awesome. All that from somebody that was doing proofreading.
Yeah, well, there is no link.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, let's get back to real talk. And you mentioned something at the end of the previous segment around tech. And you were mentioning kind of how we're seeing it. In my role working with solution providers, I am really seeing a lot of companies from overseas now looking at the US. And now it makes more sense given what the model looks like in Europe and so on. But why do you think, and it's probably a no-brainer, but why do you think there is such an emergence of tech that's coming out of Europe and now focusing on the US?
Well, I think it's very much related to trying to leverage the experience of a challenging environment that is Europe retailing and try to leverage that on the US market, which is much bigger market and a single market, unlike Europe, which is not a single market. Like we speak so many different languages, it's a different regulation in every country. I mean, trust me, doing business in Europe, it's an adventure.
Okay.
So I think it's a question of leveraging that. And I think we see a convergence of interest because a lot of the challenges that European retailers have had in the last few years are coming to the US as well. They are trying to optimize the assortment, they're trying to optimize their store, they're trying to optimize pricing. And so we can reuse a lot of what has been done in Europe and try to bring that to US. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why we see so many companies trying to break into the US market.
Okay. Interesting. So kind of to dovetail off of that, and you mentioned ESLs a couple times. You've mentioned how European retailers are really leveraging tech a lot more, and then you kind of called out Walmart getting into that game. There's this concept called connected store, and
Yeah.
you read about it, and it's like, okay, what is that?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because we actually started using the term like probably 6, 7 years ago, but
Okay.
it's only been really
Yeah.
everywhere the last couple of years. I think the idea of the connected store is to have a digitalized version of the store. So the store knows where if products are not on shelf. The store knows whether there is congestion in some areas of the store. The store knows whether what it needs to say to the staff about where they have to go and what they have to do. So it's having a control center of the store where you know everything that's happening inside the store, and you can use this data to be more data driven and to be more smart about the way you're managing the store. And so that requires a lot of things. Frankly, it's way beyond just what we do. We focus on customer paths, but it's also about tracking product on shelf, tracking prices, understanding staff and how you redeploy staff and you have staff at the right location at the right time. So it's this notion of really understanding precisely what's happening. And I think it leads to this notion we've been talking about for a long time, which is the notion of digital twin, which is this idea of we are going to create a digital twin of the store that's going to recreate everything that's happening in the store. Well, if I take my own experience, if you're trying to create a digital twin without any real-time behavior, traffic data, well, you're just creating a dollhouse. So you don't have, you don't have any idea about what's happening in the store. And that's true for every aspect of the store. You need to have real quality data in order to be able to have this vision of full connected store and digital twin.
So are there retailers that are fully a connected store in Europe?
Well, I think there are some examples of retailers who are really going down that path. So if we take, for example, Carrefour in France, which is one of our clients, but they also announced publicly that they are going down the same path as what Walmart has been doing with Fusion in the US, which is the ESL, but also computer vision for out of stock tracking and real time notification to staff about where they should go. I think that's getting really close to what is a connected store. So I don't think we're there, but I think we're getting close.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a lot of benefits. Are there any watchouts, any concerns that could pop up based on all of this tracking and like knowing every step of every, piece that's in the store?
Well, I mean, yes. I guess the key question is what do you do with this data? So it's
Mm,
not just about collecting the data, is about how do you actually use this data to understand
yeah.
better your store and to make real decision. To take a couple of example, if you see, for example, that you have two categories and you see that shoppers are going from one to the other and coming back and really flip-flopping between the two categories, um, you need to use this to say, hey, maybe the way we are defining the categories and what we are putting in category A versus category B is not what shoppers are thinking. And so we should maybe think differently. I think another example is this notion of frictionless store congestion. An example I like, James, is in many stores you have those display popping around everywhere in the store, and it seems like a great idea, right? Because it's just one more opportunity to sell one more product to impulse purchase to shopper. What we know from experience, what data tells us is that shoppers tend to select the path of least resistance, or they tend to go into the direction with the most open space. So if they have two options, one wide open and one clutter because there is traffic or people or things blocking the path, they will select the first one. So actually what it means is that when you're putting display and somehow creating congestion in the aisle, you're actually preventing them of entering the aisle. We like to say congestion kills conversion because it really stops people of going down the aisle and navigating. When you start to go from data to action, so when you're really able to say, well, using this data, this is what we can change and how we can make it easier for shopper to find their product, that's where you get the real benefit. A second one I would say is the privacy and the trust that you have with your or with your shoppers. Um, it can feel a bit scary to have all this technology that somehow tracking every single things you're doing, movement, things you're buying, etc. So I think you have to pay attention to the type of technology you're using, whether it respect privacy, and frankly, more for the relationship you build with your audience, with your shopper, even more than the legal aspect. I mean, you have to respect laws and you have to respect regulation, but ultimately it's the trust contract that you have with your shopper. So you have to show that you're paying attention to that and that you're really trying to respect their privacy. And that has influences on the type of technologies that you are using. And so I think that's something important.
Interesting. Okay. So, and I didn't think about the data necessarily. It's like, oh, wow, yeah, there's a lot more data that's coming out of this. And I just actually saw something where it was saying like AI is causing burnout or something. So, we're already buried in data.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you have a connected store. And I appreciate you talking about the friction piece because I was going to ask that. Um, but we have all this data and we also have AI. And so what are you seeing from organizations when it comes to I have just reams of data coming in and how are they potentially deploying maybe agents or some sort of automation in order to manage and 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 utilize that data?
Yeah, so that's a fascinating story. So I have a lot of conversation with senior executive about how the landscape is changing. So having AI to simplify um, is helping to make it easy to analyze data. So before AI, retailers were sitting on a ton of data. And overall, it was difficult for them to actually do something with the data, which is why you had all those solution providers, including us, who were there to help them, like, I'm going to help you translate the data into action. But what is changing with AI is that the ability to take data and to do something, build an application, build a framework, a process, is so much easier nowadays. So again, if you take Walmart in the US, thousands and thousands of people at the headquarters, including non-tech people, are using AI daily to vibe code some application. So it makes access to data and usage of data available to everyone in the company, while before it was reserved for a happy few in the business intelligence department. So it's changing the dynamic about what you can do. And so it's shifting the interest from we don't know what to do with data, so why add more data, to we need to have all the data and the best possible data, because obviously garbage in, garbage out. If you have the wrong data, you'll get the wrong output. If you have the right data and differentiated data, you'll get a differentiated and a good strategy. So I think it is shifting that. And what I hear from many conversations I have with senior executive is lots of crazy ideas about automation. So automation of planogram creation, automation of store layout. So I know one of our clients who is looking at how to automate the creation of store layout, which for everyone who has been involved in store layout, it's really more art than science nowadays, and so it's heavily influenced by AI, where they're trying to automate that, trying to automate the process in store about where people should go to do replenishment and try to optimize that. So I think I'm a believer that what we're seeing now is an incredible wave of change that is coming. That the missing piece that was blocking the adoption of data is now available with AI, where it's unlocking a ton of opportunity. And so there are so many things that can be done. You know, in our case, when you track so many shoppers moving, it's a lot of data to analyze and to process. Right now, internally, we have agents that are looking at the data and automatically crawling weeks and months and years of data and finding the right patterns and saying, well, here, there is something weird that's happening. You should look into that. While before it was a manual process where someone had to look at graphs and say, well, this looks weird. Now there is like some sort of agent, some sort of robot who is doing that for you and actually coming up with some really good ideas. So we have agents internally who are analyzing the data, and they're doing a really good job at we feed them with context and with all the knowledge we acquired over the years, and they are doing a really good job at analyzing the data. So having experience in analyzing the data, so what we call context, the ability to train the AI about this is what you should do with the data and this is what it means, plus having the right data, it's a game changer. So, well, I'm very excited by what's happening right now, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities in the future.
Wow. Okay. This is my last question in this segment, and as you were speaking, it hit me. So we have all this data, and before there was a bottleneck where we couldn't process the data, basically what you just said. And now we have this unlock because of AI and so on. So now we have all these, as you called it, opportunities, but we still have humans in the store that are trying to now they're being inundated with potentially all these changes, opportunities. What do you think the actual execution part of this puzzle, how will that be impacted by what you're seeing as dynamic change? Are we going to equip the store personnel with, something different? A robot's going to, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm just wondering your perspective or maybe what you've seen, as far as does this all help them or does it potentially create another bottleneck at the store?
Well, and I mean, you're pointing to something that's important is that you don't want to move technology to create a bottleneck somewhere else. So, it's AI is used a lot by software developer, so it helps to create a lot of code much faster. Someone has to review the code. So basically, you're transferring the bottleneck from code creation to code review. So kind of in the same way, you can have the same challenge in retail where you would create like perfect planograms, perfect layout, perfect promotion plan. Someone still has to execute in store. And so I think that um, we need to look at AI with optimism and enthusiasm because everyone thinks about it's going to remove jobs, and there is a productivity component, that's for sure. But I think the real value unlock is when you create new value, when you free up time for people to do a better job. So if we can think about AI as a way to make it easy for people in store to do their job, for them to focus on customer satisfaction, on interacting with customer, on providing help and support, there's something where we can really shift the job. But I think every one of us, we have to think about our job and think about, okay, what is it in my job that I'm going to stop doing because AI is going to do it on my behalf? And what I'm going to keep on doing. Like we could have some sort of agent asking the question on your behalf, James, but I would not be the same. So, but maybe in the editing part of the video, there are still some stuff that you do manually that, well, you
Yep.
don't really want to, and that you don't really need to be doing. So,
Right.
it's trying to find where you can refocus your time.
Okay. Got it. Got it. I think this has been fascinating. Final words. So, okay, we're at the end of the show. Obviously, there's a lot going on. So, do you have any final words that you would share with our listeners who are faced with all of this dynamic change?
Well, I honestly think it's an exciting time. I think there is a dynamic change of importance of data, importance of insight, automation. So I don't think you should look at this as a shiny object, a shiny technology, but you should think about how do I build the capability to know more about the store, about the shopper, and I'm thinking like way beyond just what we do. So how do you try to accumulate experience to bring additional data? I think if we link that back to the initial conversation, the opportunity in better collaboration with retailer is real. So if we have a lot of project going on where CPG are actually bringing our data to retailer and say, hey, we can help you do a better job at space planning. So we can use Amoobi data and help you do that. I think as a CPG, if you do that, you're putting yourself in a position where you're really collaborating, but also innovating with the retailer. And I think that's something that gives you an edge, gives you a differentiation. And frankly, we just did some reviews of some project with some of our clients, and when we ask them what they like about what we do, and I think it's true for many data solution, it's the data, it's the whether you're providing something new, but it's also the ability to have another conversation with the retailer. So having this position of I'm trying to help, I'm trying to collaborate, I'm trying to innovate with you is a game changer. And I think we need to embrace future and see how we can make the best of the wave of change that's coming to us. It's exciting.
Awesome. Well, Olivier, we did it. Love the conversation. Thank you so much for your insights from around the world. Super helpful. And we're sure to have more to come from you and Amoobi.
Thanks, James. It was a pleasure. So thanks for having me in your show.
Yeah. So you've just listened to a Tech Talk episode of ARCast. Please look forward to interesting people just like Olivier in the weeks to come. Please also don't forget to share ARCast with your colleagues. So for feedback, topic suggestions, or guest recommendations, if you want to be on the show, please let me know. You can go down to www.catman.global/ARCast. All you need to do is scroll down to the bottom of the screen and complete our form, and I will get back to you. It comes directly to me. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Today's episode was produced by me and also edited by Jake Nemi and was recorded here in Minnesota. Our theme music was brought to you by Bryant Lowry. And also a special thanks to my friends at the Association of Retail and Consumer Professionals for their promotion and management. So that's it for today. I'm signing off. This is James Jackson, and we will see you on our next episode. Bye.